Hey, everyone. I never imagined I'd be the kind of guy posting something like this, but honestly, I need some advice, and I'm at a complete loss here. So, here I am, hoping that putting it all out there will help me make sense of what's happened. Let me start by giving you a bit of context because I think it's important to understand how perfect everything seemed before it all started to unravel. My wife, Emma, and I have been married for a decade now. We have two wonderful kids, Sophia, who's 7, and Ethan, who just turned 5. Most of the time, our life felt like something straight out of a family sitcom. We had a beautiful house, stable careers, and our kids could light up any room with their smiles and laughter. We had our share of arguments, like any couple does, but nothing ever felt like it could truly tear us apart. Or so I thought. It all began about 8 months ago. At first, it was little things I could have easily dismissed as just stress or exhaustion. Emma started working late more often, saying she had some big projects that were eating up her time. Then, she began going out with her friends on weekends. Now, that wasn't out of the ordinary, we all need time to blow off steam, right? But then, she got weirdly protective of her phone, which was completely new for her. I'm talking about keeping it by her side at all times, even taking it with her to the bathroom. And when a message came through, she'd giggle, her face lighting up in a way that twisted my gut. If I walked into the room, she'd quickly lock the screen or turn the phone away from me. That's when the paranoia started to set in. I tried convincing myself that I was being irrational. After all, trust is the bedrock of any marriage, isn't it? But that uneasy feeling just wouldn't go away, and soon enough, it began eating away at me. Still, I kept pushing it aside. Emma had never given me a reason to doubt her before. Then one night, everything changed. It was a Friday, I remember because I'd come home early from work, planning to surprise her with a nice dinner. But when I walked in, the house was eerily quiet. No sign of Emma, no kids. I called her, and she answered in this slightly irritated voice, saying she'd taken Sophia and Ethan to the park. Something about the way she said it made my heart race. She hadn't mentioned any plans to go to the park earlier, and I know Emma, she's a planner, especially when it comes to the kids. When she finally came home, I could tell right away something wasn't right. Emma looked rattled, almost as if my early arrival had caught her off guard. She gave me a quick, almost mechanical kiss, but her eyes darted around the room like she was searching for an explanation she hadn't yet thought up. The kids ran up to me, bubbling over with stories about their day, but Emma seemed miles away. That's when I knew. I didn't have any solid proof yet, but my gut screamed that something was off. Way off. From that day on, I started watching more closely, picking up on every little detail that didn't add up. She'd come home late from work, always with some convenient excuse like, the meeting ran over, or, I had to wrap up a few things. Sometimes, she'd smell like a mix of alcohol and a perfume I didn't recognize. Other times, she'd come home looking almost too happy, like she'd just gotten away with something. Her entire demeanor felt different, like she was holding back a piece of herself from me. Then one evening, it all came crashing down. Emma told me she was going out with friends. The kids were staying at my parents' place for the night, so I had the house to myself. As I sat there alone, my mind started to spiral. That persistent, gnawing doubt I'd been trying to ignore for so long was now front and center in my mind. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into our bedroom, and there it was, her phone, sitting right on the nightstand, charging. My heart hammered as I stared at it. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but something deep inside me was screaming for answers. I picked it up, and with trembling fingers, I unlocked it, using the password I knew by heart from the countless times I'd seen her enter it. And there they were, the messages. Flirty, intimate texts between her and a guy named Derek, someone I had never even heard of. My stomach churned as I read through the conversation, every word cutting deeper and deeper. They were talking about things they'd done together, things she hadn't done with me in years. My hands shook as I scrolled further, feeling sicker with every line. Without thinking, I took screenshots of everything. I knew I'd need them later. But the worst part? It wasn't some recent fling. No, this had been going on for over a year. An entire year of lies and deceit. She'd been with Derek while I was clueless, chalking up our distance to just another rough patch in our marriage. How could I have been so blind? The initial shock slowly morphed into anger. I wanted to storm up to her right then, scream, and demand answers. But I knew I had to be smart about it. I needed more than just an impulsive confrontation. I had to gather my thoughts and figure out my next move. For the next few days, I felt like I was running on autopilot. I went through the motions, work, taking care of the kids, but my mind was lost in the betrayal I'd uncovered. Every time I looked at Emma, all I could see was the woman who had shattered the vows we made to each other. But I kept my cool, holding back, waiting for the right moment to confront her. That moment came when Emma told me she was going out with her friends again. This time, I didn't believe a word she said. I told her I'd take the kids to my parents' place for the weekend, but that was a cover. After dropping them off, I doubled back to the house and parked a few blocks away, out of sight. I slipped inside and waited. The minutes dragged on, feeling like hours. Then, finally, around midnight, I heard the front door creak open. Emma stumbled in, smelling like booze, and something else. A scent that wasn't hers, Derek's cologne. I sat there in the dark, watching her fumble with her shoes, giggling to herself, completely unaware that I was sitting right there. When she finally noticed me, her face went pale. "Where are the kids?" she asked, her voice unsteady. "They're safe," I said, getting to my feet, my heart pounding in my chest. "But we need to talk." Emma looked like she'd just seen a ghost. Her face flushed, and her hands shook as she kicked off her heels. What's going on?" she stammered, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "I know, Emma. I know about you and Derek." Her eyes went wide, and for a second, she stood there, frozen. Then she started to stammer, "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me." I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. I pulled out my phone and shoved it in front of her face. "I found these. I know everything." The color drained from her cheeks as she stared at the screen. Then, instead of guilt or regret, what I got was defiance. "You went through my phone. How dare you invade my privacy?" she spat, venom dripping from her words. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had caught her cheating, and all she cared about was her privacy. "You've been lying to me for over a year." I yelled, my hands trembling with rage. I shouted, my voice shaking with rage. "You've been cheating on me, and you're worried about your privacy?" Emma's face contorted with anger for a split second, but then it softened. "Yes," she said, her tone cold and detached. "I was with Derek. But so what? Our marriage was crumbling anyway. You never had time for me. You never listened. Derek made me feel alive again." Her words were like a dagger to the heart, and for a moment, I just stood there, stunned. She was actually trying to pin this on me, to justify her actions by making me out to be the villain. "We had issues," I said, my voice faltering. "But that doesn't justify what you did. You could have come to me, talked to me. We could have worked through it. But instead, you chose to cheat." Emma folded her arms across her chest, her gaze icy and unwavering. "Maybe if you'd been a better husband, I wouldn't have needed to," she shot back, her voice devoid of any emotion. The coldness of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Is that really how you see it? That this is all my fault?" I asked, my voice breaking. She shrugged indifferently, her expression blank. "I don't know, Jake. Maybe it's both of us. But what's done is done. The real question is, where do we go from here?" I took a step back, trying to process the onslaught of emotions. Part of me wanted to kick her out, to tell her to never come back. But then I thought about our kids, Sophia and Ethan. They adored their mom, and the idea of tearing their world apart crushed me. "We go to counseling," I finally whispered, barely finding the strength to speak. "We try to fix this. For the kids." Emma let out a bitter, mocking laugh. "Counseling? You really think that's going to fix anything?" "I don't know," I admitted, exhaustion weighing down on me. "But we owe it to our kids to at least try." She stared at me for what felt like forever, then sighed heavily. "Fine. We'll try counseling. But don't expect miracles." The days after that conversation were some of the hardest of my life. Emma and I barely exchanged more than a few words, and when we did, it was strained and awkward. I moved into the guest room, unable to bear lying beside her. The kids picked up on the tension, but I tried to keep things as normal as I could for their sake. We started counseling the next week. Our therapist, Dr. Matthews, was a calm, middle-aged woman with a gentle presence that made it easy to talk. In our first session, she asked us to share our thoughts and how we felt about the state of our marriage. Right from the get-go, Emma was on the defensive. "I just feel like Jake checked out a long time ago," she said, arms crossed tightly, her eyes avoiding mine. "He was always at work, always too busy. Derek made me feel alive again." I could feel my blood boiling, but I took a deep breath and forced myself to stay calm. "I was working hard to support us, Emma. I thought we were in this together. You never once told me you were unhappy. You just went behind my back." Dr. Matthews stepped in before we could go further down that path. "It's clear that there's a lot of pain and resentment here, Jake. It's crucial to acknowledge Emma's feelings, even if you don't agree with her actions. And, Emma, you have to realize the depth of Jake's pain." Emma rolled her eyes but muttered, "I'm sorry, Jake. I didn't mean to hurt you." Her apology sounded empty, but I nodded anyway. "I'm sorry too, Emma. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you the way you needed. But you should have talked to me." The sessions continued, but it was like trudging through mud. Progress was slow, and Emma seemed detached, as if she were just going through the motions. Meanwhile, I was drowning in a whirlpool of emotions, anger, betrayal, and a deep, aching sadness. I desperately wanted to fix things for our kids' sake, but a small part of me was beginning to wonder if it was even possible. One evening, I came home from work and saw Emma on the phone. The moment she spotted me, she hurriedly ended the call, a guilty expression flashing across her face. My heart dropped. "Who were you talking to?" I asked, dreading the answer. "No one," she responded way too quickly. "Just a friend." I didn't buy it for a second. "Was it Derek?" She hesitated, then gave a small nod. "He just wanted to check on me, see how I'm doing." "It's nothing, Jake, I promise." A wave of anger surged through me. "You're still in touch with him after everything?" Emma's face hardened. "He's just a friend, Jake. I needed someone to talk to." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "We're supposed to be fixing our marriage, Emma. How can we do that if you're still talking to the guy you cheated with?" She looked away, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't think." "You didn't think?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "You didn't think about me, about the kids, about any of this?" Emma's eyes welled up with tears, and she started to cry, but I couldn't muster any sympathy. "You have to choose, Emma. It's either him or us. You can't have both." She nodded, wiping her tears away. "I'll stop talking to him, I swear." But her promises meant nothing to me anymore. I felt like I was looking at a stranger, someone I didn't recognize. The woman I'd loved and trusted was gone, replaced by someone I wasn't sure I could ever forgive. That night, as I lay in the guest room, I wondered if I was fighting a losing battle. Maybe some things were too broken to fix. But I knew I had to try, for Sophia and Ethan, if for no other reason. As the weeks dragged on, Emma kept her promise and stopped contacting Derek, or at least that's what she told me. I was still on edge, suspicious of every little move she made. Once trust is shattered, it's nearly impossible to put it back together again. Dr. Matthews encouraged us to spend more time together and try to reconnect. We started going on dates again, trying to rediscover what had once drawn us to each other. One Friday night, Emma suggested we go out for dinner at a nice restaurant. I agreed, hoping this could be a turning point for us. The evening began well enough. We chatted about light-hearted things, reminiscing about the early days of our relationship. For a fleeting moment, it felt like we might actually be making progress. But as the night wore on, Emma's demeanor shifted. She grew quiet, her answers became clipped, and she kept glancing at her phone. I tried to brush it off, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't ease. "Is everything okay?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice even. "Yeah, just tired," she murmured, but her eyes betrayed her words. The drive home was suffocatingly silent. When we finally got back, she headed straight to bed without saying a word. I stayed in the living room, staring blankly at the wall, feeling more isolated than ever. The next morning, Emma was unusually quiet. I tried striking up a conversation, but she seemed lost in her thoughts. The kids, sensing the tension, kept their distance. I decided to take them out for a bit, to give Emma some space and clear my own head. We went to the park, and for a few precious hours, I managed to forget about the mess waiting for me at home. Sophia and Ethan's laughter was a temporary balm for my wounded heart. But as we drove back, the dread of returning to that tense atmosphere settled in my chest like a heavy weight. When we got home, I found Emma in the kitchen, her eyes red and swollen. She'd been crying. "Emma, what's going on?" I asked softly. She glanced up at me, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. "I don't know, Jake. I don't know if I can do this anymore." Her words struck me like a sledgehammer. "What do you mean?" Emma wiped at her eyes and took a shaky breath. "I thought I could fix things, but now I'm not sure I can. I feel so guilty, and every time I look at you, all I see is the pain I've caused." "We can get through this," I replied, desperation creeping into my voice. "It's going to take time, but we can make it work." Emma shook her head slowly. "I don't know if I deserve another chance. Maybe you and the kids would be better off without me." I grabbed her hands, holding them tight, forcing her to meet my gaze. "We're a family, Emma. We need you. The kids need you. I need you. We can't just give up." She broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. I pulled her close, trying to soothe her, but inside, I felt like I was holding on to something that was slowly slipping away. That night, Emma and I talked for hours. We laid everything bare, our fears, our hopes, and our love for our children. It was raw and painful, but it was the most honest conversation we'd had in months. By the end, we both knew that the road ahead would be rough, but we also knew we had to try. For ourselves, for each other, and most importantly, for our kids. The next morning, we woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't some magical fix, but it was a beginning. We decided to focus on rebuilding our trust and finding our way back to one another. It was a long, hard road, but for the first time in what felt like forever, there seemed to be a faint light at the end of the tunnel. The weeks following that night were some of the toughest we'd ever faced. We were both determined to repair our marriage, but the trust that had been shattered was difficult to piece back together. Dr. Matthews continued guiding us through our sessions, urging us to communicate openly and honestly. I could see that Emma was putting in the effort. She was more engaged with the kids and more attentive to me. She even suggested we take a weekend trip together, just the two of us, to reconnect. I agreed, hoping that a change of scenery might help us find our way back to what we once had. We booked a cozy cabin in the mountains and arranged for my parents to watch Sophia and Ethan. The drive up was quiet but not uncomfortable. We made small talk, and for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. The cabin was beautiful, nestled among towering trees, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of nature. We spent our first day hiking and soaking in the tranquility of the mountains. That evening, we sat by the crackling fireplace, sipping wine and talking. Emma finally opened up about her guilt and how hard she was trying to make things right. "I'm so sorry, Jake," she said, tears shining in her eyes. "I know I've hurt you in ways I can never truly understand. I'm trying to be better, for you and for the kids." "I can see that," I replied softly, squeezing her hand. "And I appreciate it. But it's going to take time, Emma. We both need to be patient." We went to bed that night holding each other close, a small but meaningful step toward healing. The rest of the weekend went smoothly, and by the time we were driving back home, I felt more hopeful than I had in a long time. But reality set in again as soon as we got back. The kids were overjoyed to see us, and we settled back into our usual routines. Yet the underlying tension lingered. I still found myself glancing at Emma's phone occasionally, and even though I never saw anything suspicious, the paranoia never really left me. About a month after our getaway, Emma came home from work looking unusually tense. I could tell something was bothering her, but she stayed quiet throughout dinner. After we got the kids to bed, I decided it was time to confront her. "Emma, is everything all right? You seem a bit off tonight," I said cautiously, watching her bite her lip in hesitation. "There's something I need to tell you, Jake." Her voice was barely a whisper. A sense of dread filled me. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, as if preparing herself. "It's Ryan. He reached out to me today. He said he wanted to apologize and asked if we could still be friends." A surge of anger and betrayal washed over me. "And what did you say?" I demanded. "I told him no," she replied quickly, almost too fast. "I told him that I'm working on my marriage, and I can't have any contact with him." I scrutinized her face, searching for any signs of deceit. She appeared sincere, but just knowing that Ryan had reached out left me shaken. "I want to be upfront with you, Jake. I don't want to keep any secrets. I'm committed to us, and I need you to know that." Her words sounded genuine, but the fear of being hurt again loomed over me. "I appreciate your honesty, Emma, but you need to understand how difficult this is for me. Every time something like this happens, it brings back all the pain." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I'm serious about fixing things." We embraced, a fragile peace settling between us. The next few days were tense but bearable. We continued our counseling sessions and tried to focus on the positive steps we were taking together. Then, one afternoon, Emma came home earlier than usual, a worried expression clouding her face. "Jake, we need to talk." "What's wrong now?" I asked, bracing myself for more bad news. "I think someone's been following me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I've noticed a car parked near my office and even around our neighborhood. It's been there too often for it to just be a coincidence." A chill crept down my spine. "Did you get a good look at the driver?" She shook her head, her shoulders slumping. "No, but I have a really bad feeling about this. What if it's Ryan?" The possibility hadn't crossed my mind until now, but it made sense. Ryan could be angry and trying to scare her after she cut him off. "We need to call the police," I said firmly. Emma nodded, looking relieved that I took her concerns seriously. "I'll call them first thing in the morning." That night, we both lay awake, a sense of unease hanging over us like a dark cloud. We were trying to move forward, but it felt like the past wasn't done with us yet. As I stared at the ceiling, I realized our journey was far from over, and the road ahead might be even rockier than what we'd already endured. The next morning, Emma called the police to report the suspicious car. They took her statement seriously and promised to increase patrols around our neighborhood. In the meantime, we agreed to be extra cautious, keeping a close eye on the kids and double-checking that every door and window was securely locked. The following days were nerve-wracking. I found myself constantly glancing over my shoulder, my paranoia growing by the hour. Emma was clearly rattled too, jumping at the slightest sound. Every creak and rustle seemed like a potential threat. Our attempts to rebuild trust and find a sense of normalcy were being completely undermined by this new danger. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, Emma's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She glanced at the screen, and all the color drained from her face. "It's Ryan," she whispered, holding the phone out to show me the caller ID. "Answer it," I said, my heart hammering in my chest. "Put it on speaker." Emma hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and picked up the call. "Hello. Emma, it's Ryan. We need to talk," came his voice through the speaker, sounding more desperate than menacing. "There's nothing to talk about, Ryan," Emma said firmly, holding the phone steady. "I've told you, I'm trying to fix my marriage. You need to stop contacting me. Please, just listen to me," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry for everything. I just need to explain myself." I couldn't hold back my fury any longer. Snatching the phone from Emma's hand, I spoke directly into the receiver. "Listen, Ryan, you need to leave my wife alone. If you come anywhere near her or our family again, I'll have no choice but to involve the police. Do you understand?" There was a long silence on the other end before he finally responded. "I understand, Jake. I'm sorry. I never meant to cause any trouble. I'll stay away. I promise." With a trembling hand, I ended the call, my anger bubbling beneath the surface. "This has to stop, Emma. We can't keep living in fear like this." "I know," she murmured, her eyes brimming with tears. "I'll block his number and make sure he has no way of reaching me. I'm so sorry, Jake. I never wanted things to turn out like this." For the next few days, we struggled to regain some semblance of normalcy. Emma blocked Ryan's number and erased every bit of contact she had with him. I stayed vigilant, keeping an eye on our surroundings and hoping the increased police presence would ward off any further disturbances. A week passed. One night, Emma and I were lounging on the couch, watching a movie after putting the kids to bed. For the first time in what seemed like ages, things felt almost normal again. But that fleeting peace was shattered by a sudden, violent crash outside. We both jumped up, my heart hammering wildly. Grabbing a baseball bat from the closet, I motioned for Emma to stay inside. Slowly, I stepped out onto the porch, scanning the darkness for any signs of movement. My eyes fell on the source of the noise, a brick, wrapped in paper, lying on the ground beside the shattered living room window. My hands shook as I picked it up and carefully unwrapped the note around it. Scrawled in messy, angry handwriting were the words, "This is not over." Emma appeared at the door, her face ghostly pale. "What is it, Jake?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I handed her the note, my mind racing with a mix of fear and rage. "He's not giving up," I muttered through gritted teeth. "We need to call the police again." The officers arrived swiftly, taking down our statements and promising to step up their patrols around our house. But despite their assurances, our anxiety didn't ease. That night, neither Emma nor I slept. We took turns keeping watch by the front door, the weight of our circumstances crushing us under its relentless pressure. The following day, I decided enough was enough. I took matters into my own hands and installed security cameras around our property and set up motion-sensitive lights. Emma was visibly frightened, but she did her best to remain strong for the kids' sake. We both knew living in constant fear was no way to rebuild our broken relationship. A few nights later, the cameras caught footage of a man skulking around the perimeter of our house. The police identified him as Ryan and promptly arrested him for harassment and violating the restraining order Emma had filed against him. The sense of relief that washed over us was overwhelming, but it didn't erase the emotional damage already done. The fear and tension had left deep scars on both of us. In the days that followed, Emma and I had several long, heartfelt talks. We spoke about our fears, our dreams, and the lingering distrust that still hovered between us. Ryan's harassment had shaken us to our core, but it had also forced us to confront our issues head-on, without any more deception or avoidance. One evening, Emma's voice quivered as she broke the silence. "Jake," she began softly, "I want us to start fresh. I know I made terrible mistakes, but I'm dedicated to making this work, for us, and for the kids." I studied her face, searching for any hint of insincerity. I could see the genuine remorse and determination in her eyes, layered with guilt but also hope. "I want that too, Emma, but it's going to take time. We need to be patient with each other and work on rebuilding what we've lost." We both knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. It was going to be a long, uphill battle. But for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. We had faced a nightmare and emerged on the other side, battered, bruised, but still standing. And maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to heal and move forward together. With Ryan behind bars, the constant tension in our home began to lift little by little. The shadows of fear started to fade, replaced by tentative steps towards something that felt like healing. The kids seemed much more at ease, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Emma and I began to rediscover a bit of normalcy. But our journey to repair what had been broken was still a long road ahead. Dr. Wilson continued to be a vital part of our recovery. During one session, she suggested an exercise where we each wrote down what we appreciated about the other and shared our hopes for the future. Emma and I exchanged our lists, and it turned out to be an unexpectedly emotional experience. Putting into words the reasons we had fallen in love and recalling the dreams we once held brought us closer together. As we worked on rebuilding our connection, we also focused on creating new memories. We planned more family outings and date nights, trying to revive some of the old magic that had first drawn us to each other. One weekend, we decided to take the kids on a camping trip. Olivia and Jack were over the moon with excitement, and their joy was infectious. The trip turned out to be a huge success. We hiked through the woods, fished in a quiet stream, and roasted marshmallows over a crackling campfire. For those few precious days, it felt like the dark shadow of our past had finally lifted. Emma and I shared some genuine moments of connection during that trip, staying up late to talk and laugh by the campfire as the kids slept soundly in the tent nearby. Back at home, we slipped back into our daily routines, but there was a noticeable change in the way we interacted. Emma seemed more open and engaged, and I made a conscious effort to be more present and attentive. Slowly but surely, we were rebuilding our trust, one careful step at a time. One evening, a few months after our camping trip, Emma and I were sitting on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The kids were running around the yard, their laughter echoing in the crisp evening air. It was one of those rare, perfect moments where everything seemed to fall into place. "Jake," Emma said softly, breaking the comfortable silence between us, "there's something I need to tell you." My heart skipped a beat. The last time she had started a conversation like that, my entire world had unraveled. "What is it?" I asked cautiously. She took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the setting sun. "I want us to renew our vows." Her words caught me completely off guard. It wasn't something I'd expected to hear, but the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like the perfect idea. Renewing our vows could be a way to reaffirm our commitment to each other and our family. A clean slate, a new beginning. "I think that's a wonderful idea," I said, reaching out to take her hand. We started making plans for the vow renewal ceremony together. We wanted it to be an intimate event, just close family and friends. The kids were thrilled, especially Olivia, who was overjoyed at the thought of being a flower girl. As the date drew closer, I found myself reflecting on everything we'd gone through in the past year, the pain, the betrayal, and the fear. But I also remembered the progress we'd made and the steps we'd taken toward healing. Emma had shown real remorse and a steadfast commitment to making things right, and I had worked tirelessly to let go of the anger and resentment that had been weighing me down. The day of the ceremony arrived, and it was everything we had hoped for. We chose a peaceful spot in a nearby park, surrounded by blooming flowers and the soft sounds of nature all around us. Olivia and Jack stood beside us, their faces glowing with happiness. As Emma and I faced each other, holding hands in front of our loved ones, I felt a sense of calm that I hadn't experienced in a long time. We recited our vows, pledging once again to love and honor each other. This time, the words carried so much more weight, they were a testament to everything we had endured and overcome. "I love you, Jake," Emma said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you for giving us another chance." "I love you too, Emma," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "Here's to our new beginning." We sealed our vows with a tender kiss, and our family and friends erupted into cheers and applause. For the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely hopeful about our future. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was genuinely hopeful about what lay ahead. There was still plenty of work left to do, but I was confident we were on the right track. That night, as we lay side by side, Emma nestled close to me, her breath warm against my chest. "Thank you, Jake, for everything," she murmured softly. I kissed her gently on the forehead. "We're in this together, Emma. Always." As I drifted off to sleep, a sense of peace washed over me. Our marriage had been tested in ways I never thought possible, but we had managed to come through it stronger. We had found a path forward, and for that, I felt nothing but gratitude. In the months that followed our vow renewal, life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. Emma and I continued our counseling sessions with Dr. Wilson, working hard on communication and rebuilding trust. We both understood that healing wouldn't happen overnight, it was a journey, and we were determined to see it through. One day, I returned home from work to find Emma sitting on the porch, a distant look in her eyes. She smiled as I approached, but it was clear something was weighing on her mind. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked, sitting down beside her. She sighed and ran a hand through her hair, looking a little nervous. "I've been thinking a lot about us and everything we've been through. I know we've made a lot of progress, but there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about." A wave of anxiety tightened my chest. "What is it, Em?" She glanced at me, her eyes filled with earnestness. "I've been offered a promotion at work. It's an incredible opportunity, but it would mean I'd have to travel a lot more. I'm worried about what it could mean for us and our family." I took a deep breath, letting her words sink in. The thought of her being away so frequently was unsettling, but I didn't want to be the one to hold her back. "How do you feel about it?" "I'm excited, but also really scared," she confessed. "I don't want to risk everything we've worked so hard to rebuild. I want to make sure we're strong enough to handle it." I reached for her hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. "Emma, I believe in us. We've come a long way, and I'm sure we can handle anything as long as we stay open and committed to each other. If this promotion is something you truly want, then I'm behind you all the way." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she smiled softly. "Thank you, Jake. That means everything to me." Over the next few weeks, we sat down and figured out how we would manage her new schedule. We made a plan to stay connected with regular video calls and blocked out time for family activities whenever she was back home. It wasn't going to be easy, but we were determined to make it work. Emma accepted the promotion, and soon her new role began. The first few trips were tough on all of us, but we found ways to adapt and stay close. The kids were proud of their mom's achievements, and I did my best to keep things running smoothly at home. One evening, while Emma was away on a business trip, I received an unexpected call from her. She sounded excited, but there was a hint of nervousness in her voice. "Jake, I have something to tell you," she said. "What is it?" I asked, curiosity piqued. "I've been asked to give the keynote speech at an upcoming conference," she said, a bit breathless. "It's a huge honor, but honestly, I'm terrified." "Emma, that's fantastic news!" I exclaimed. "You're going to be amazing." "I know it." Her voice softened, and I could almost see the smile on her face through the phone. "I wish you could be here with me. I miss you." "I miss you too," I replied gently, "but I'll be cheering you on from home. You've got this." The night of her speech, the kids and I gathered around the computer and watched the live stream of the event. Emma looked poised and confident, delivering her speech with elegance and passion. I couldn't have been prouder of her. When she called me afterward, her excitement was palpable. "I did it, Jake. I really did it," she exclaimed. "I knew you would," I said, a wide smile spreading across my face. "You're incredible, Emma." Her trips became more frequent, but our relationship continued to grow stronger. We made the most of the time we had together, and I realized I was falling in love with her all over again. Despite the challenges, it felt like we were truly building something new and beautiful out of the ashes of what had almost been lost. Even with the distance created by her new job, we felt closer than ever. One weekend, Emma surprised me with an impromptu trip to a nearby city. She had everything arranged, my parents agreed to watch the kids, giving us some much-needed time to ourselves. We spent the weekend exploring the city, trying out new restaurants, and visiting local attractions. It was a perfect escape from our everyday routine and reminded me of how much I valued the time we spent together. Sitting in a cozy cafe, sipping coffee and watching people pass by, Emma reached across the table and gently took my hand. "Jake, thank you for sticking by me through everything. I know it's been tough, but your support means the world to me." "I love you, Emma," I replied, feeling a swell of emotion. "We've been through hell and back, but we're stronger because of it. I wouldn't trade what we have for anything." She smiled, her eyes shining with genuine emotion. "I love you too, Jake. Here's to us and whatever the future holds." Our relationship wasn't perfect, but we had learned how to face the obstacles together. We were partners, and that made all the difference. Each day was a reminder of our resilience and dedication to each other. We battled through the darkness and emerged on the other side, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. As time passed, our lives fell into a new rhythm. Emma's frequent business trips became part of our routine, and we continued to adapt and grow stronger as a couple. The kids were thriving, and our bond as a family felt tighter than ever. Emma and I still attended counseling sessions with Dr. Wilson to stay on track and address any issues that came up. One evening, as we sat down for a quiet dinner at home, Emma reached out and placed her hand on mine. "Jake, there's something I've been thinking about a lot lately." My heart skipped a beat, but I tried to keep my expression neutral. "What is it?" She hesitated, her smile a mix of excitement and nervousness. "I think we should move. Get a fresh start for all of us. New place, new memories. What do you think?" I was caught off guard but intrigued by the idea. "Where were you thinking?" "I found this house in a small town about an hour away," she said, pulling out her phone and showing me pictures. "It's beautiful, with a big yard for the kids and plenty of space for us. I think it could be the perfect place to start over." The house was charming, with a spacious backyard where Madison and Tyler could run and play. The thought of leaving behind all the memories of pain and starting somewhere new felt liberating. "It looks amazing," I said, feeling a surge of excitement. "Let's do it." The decision to move was met with enthusiasm from the kids, and within a few months, we were settled into our new home. The change of scenery brought a renewed sense of hope and optimism. We spent weekends exploring the town, meeting new neighbors, and building fresh memories. One day, as I was unpacking boxes in the new house, I stumbled upon an old photo album. As I flipped through its pages, I was reminded of the good times Emma and I had shared before things went awry. That evening, I showed the album to her, and we spent hours reminiscing about our early years together. "Look at us," Emma murmured, pointing at a photo from our honeymoon. "We were so happy." "We still can be," I replied, pulling her close. "We've come a long way, and I truly believe our best days are still ahead of us." Emma nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you, Jake, for never giving up on us." As we continued to settle into our new life, we remained focused on strengthening our relationship and building a future together. Emma's career continued to soar, and I found new professional opportunities in our new town. It felt like we were finally creating the life we had always envisioned, a life filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities. The kids quickly adapted to their new school and made friends, which eased the transition even more. One evening, we decided to host a small get-together with our new neighbors. Sitting around the fire pit in our backyard, the sounds of laughter and lively conversation filled the air. Emma and I exchanged a look, a shared gratitude for the fresh start and the bonds we were forming. After the guests left and the kids were tucked in for the night, Emma and I sat quietly on the porch, enjoying the calm of the evening. "It feels like we've finally found where we belong," she murmured, resting her head on my shoulder. "I couldn't agree more," I replied, wrapping my arm around her. "We've gone through so much, but all of it has made us stronger." As the months turned into years, our love continued to grow and evolve. We still faced challenges, but we faced them together, always united and dedicated to our family. Looking back on everything, I could see how Emma's betrayal had almost destroyed us. But it had also forced us to confront our issues head-on and rebuild our marriage on a stronger, more honest foundation. We had learned to communicate openly, to trust again, and to be each other's unwavering support system. One night, as we lay in bed, Emma turned to me and whispered, "I'm so thankful for you, Jake. You've given me a second chance, and I promise I'll never take that for granted." I smiled, pulling her close. "I love you, Emma. We're in this together, now and always." As I drifted off to sleep, a deep sense of peace washed over me. Our journey had been turbulent, but it had ultimately brought us to a place of deeper love and understanding. We had managed to find our way back to each other, and I knew that no matter what lay ahead, we would face it together.